Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Whatever Floats Your Boat. And today I'm going to give a book review on Ostrich Boys by Keith Gray that I only finished today. The book is set in England, in a little town in England. And it is about three teenage boys who have just lost one of their friends, or actually one of their best friends, you should say, the fourth in the quartet. You could say Ross, who had a terrible accident. And I'm going to tell you for this review, there are going to be a few spoilers, just that you know, uh, regarding the plot. I'm going to keep them to minimum if possible. Right, so basically the premise of the book is the three boys are very disheartened and disappointed by the very sort of not strict, but rigid and boring and unpersonal funeral that their friend Ross received. And they decide to steal his urn or his ashes and travel to a place called Ross, where Ross wanted to go one day, because it's the same name. But obviously now that he's died, he's never going to get to do that. So they want to do it for him. And they embark on a journey up to Scotland, where Ross is located. And obviously, I mean, the book is fantastic in as much because it really is it's a very simple premise, right? In terms of get the ashes, go to Ross, scatter them there. But the journey obviously is so much more. For me, it was really a book about the fragility of childhood and teenagehood, and the sort of the loss of innocence, not only because someone died, but also, and their lives have changed now forever, but also because they are slowly growing up and they have to realize that specific things will not be as they always used to be. And I feel it's a very sort of liberating a journey for them as well. So the three boys, I should probably mention, they're called Blake, Sim, and Kenny. Blake is the main character. It's written in I person, as I narrator, and Sim is sort of the not so good off, cool troublemaker. And Kenny is the one who's loaded and who's scared of his mommy and who's a bit of a mama's boy. And Ross was the dreamy, creative writer who sort of leaves this huge hole in all of their lives. So everything goes wrong on the journey up to Ross, and instead of being a quick trip up and there and down, they find new friends, and they go bungee jumping and whatnot. And they slowly discover things about themselves and about their friendship to Ross, and about as I said, the fragility of their lives and also of their friendship to some extent, because there's actually two scenes that I want to point out that I really specifically liked without giving too many spoilers. The first one is when they end up basically, I can't remember where, but anyway, they get a ride to Blackpool with two men whose names I've just forgotten at this very second because I've written them down previously. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Two really cool people who just take them with them. This is embarrassing. I don't know. There's one called Bacon. I remember him. He's the asshole from the bungee jumping. But what's the other one? It doesn't matter. Joe. It's Joe. Yes, Joe and Gus. But Joe is the important one. It doesn't really matter. Anyway, there are two blokes who take them to Blackpool in their car, and they're very nice. Surprisingly, actually, because you think, oh, this is going to go bad, but it doesn't. And they talk about, their friend Ross. They don't tell him. So they tell him about this beautiful friendship that they had with Ross, and then he says, "Oh yeah, remember Gus? We went to school with that guy, and now we're not friends anymore." And then they ask, "Why not?" And he said, "I don't know. We just sort of, drifted apart." And then they were like Kenny and Sim and Blake are like, "Well, then you can't have been good friends." And I think this is so beautiful how Keith Gray captures this because I can remember that when you're a teenager, you're convinced that these friends are going to be yours forever, and that you're always going to hang out, and you're always going to call each other after school and stuff. But the reality is that in most of the cases it isn't. You don't hang with your school friends necessarily in your real life. And this was sort of the first realization: we may not be friends until forever. And I thought this was beautifully handled in this situation. The second thing, for me as a girl, it was interesting to read it because, thinking back, I don't think I've really come across many YA novels that were only with boys. Usually it's like a trio of two boys and the girl, or two girls and the boy, or only girls. I've read that. But only boys, I've not really encountered that a lot. So it was interesting for me because as a girl, I have no clue how boys work. And getting a glimpse, and I think an authentic glimpse, because the author is male, into how teenage boys behave was very fascinating. There is a very interesting scene as well when they hang out with some girls on the field, and Blake gets to talk with one of them, and then she ponders about whether boys can actually be real friends, because girls actually really tell each other everything, and they cry in front of each other, and they cuddle, and they have pajama parties, and they don't have any secrets in front of each other, which is kind of true. I mean, probably not for all friendships, but that's true. And it really amazed me how a male author can sort of get this perspective that actually many women, or especially girls, have. It's like, I know so many of my girlfriends who are like, yeah, my boyfriend's friends, so-called friends, because for us, some male relationships are in a way that you as a girl, you would say that that's not friendship. That's not how you treat each other. You don't laugh at each other. You don't kick at each other. You don't punch at each other and things. But and so that was for me a very impressive moment in the book. It was that actually he could sort of write from a girl's perspective, even though the book is from a boy's perspective, and get her perspective in. So yeah, I really like that. Writing, I think it's written fantastically. It's very succinct. It's not too flowery, but there are some beautiful, beautiful sentences in here. Some beautiful phrases as well. There's one that actually clung to my mind. I cannot completely phrase it now because I don't know which page it was. It's towards the end. But he's going somewhere, and he said, so he's going sort of into a bay, and it says the sea had taken a huge bite out of the land. Sentences like that really draw visual, or create visuals in your head very strongly. And I enjoyed that very much. Do I have anything negative to say about it? I don't think so. It was very fast paced, even though not much is actually happening. I mean, a lot is happening, but what I'm saying is it's also contemplative in between stuff, but it's really fast paced. I think the only thing that probably, if I had to say something negative, once or twice I thought probably one coincidence too much, but yeah, but also not really, because it was fine to keep the pace going. And the ending for me was beautiful, wonderful, but it was quite tough to digest, for me at least. It had a bit of a hopelessness to it, if I'm honest, but in a good way, because that's how life works. The Herald has quoted, and I quote, "One can't help thinking that if there were more writers like Keith Gray, more teenagers would read," which I think is very high praise that I can only back up. I do, however, think that probably this is something that boys would be more interested in. Some of the language is slightly derogative towards women in terms of that's just I don't know, your sister's tits are really big and stuff. I mean, nothing bad. they're just teenage boys, but I don't know if a teenage girl would probably enjoy reading that. But for example, my dad, my mid-50s dad, has read it, absolutely loved it. And I think it's also a perfect way to sort of jump back into this teenage time, which I've also done, even though it's not so far away from me. Let's just pretend that is true. And yeah, it was also, just to back this up a little bit more, shortlisted for the Costa Children's Book Award for the Philip or Killib, I never know how to pronounce it, Carnegie Medal and the Royal Mail Award. So yeah, pretty appreciated. And I love this. This is the last thing I'm going to do on the cover, actually. And this is what got me intrigued. It says, "It's not really kidnapping, is it? He'd have to be alive for it to be proper kidnapping." And it basically sums up the mood a little bit in the book. So yeah, for more book reviews, you can check out my channel or subscribe. Yeah, you can go to my blog. It's probably even better, floatingtheboat.co.uk, where you find all sorts of book reviews and little bits and bops about my life. And yeah, I'm going to end that stream now, and hope you enjoy reading Keith Gray's Ostrich Boys.